I've picked up that there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety within the teaching community regarding the vaccines and the decision to get vaccinated or not. Now, I mean, that is totally up to you. That's your decision. You've made it a choice. Those of you that still want to get vaccinated, you can, but a lot of people have chosen not to get vaccinated. Now, the uncertainty comes in with, can you lose your job if you chose not to get vaccinated? Or the more longer reaching effect is, can an employer, when you go for an interview, can they ask you point blank, have you been vaccinated? And can they discriminate against you when they make the decision on who they are going to appoint, on whether they are going to appoint you or not, just based on the fact that you've chosen to take the vaccine or not? Now, in today's episode, I interviewed Janet Botha, who is an attorney, but more importantly, a good friend of mine who studied law, practiced law, went into teaching, became an executive at a school, and then went back into law. So today, in today's episode, we chat to Janet Botha, and she is sharing with us her thoughts. And because remember, we can't give legal advice and nothing is set in stone, but we need to start pondering, we need to start thinking about what the repercussions could be for the education system, for the cohort of teachers who've chosen to not get vaccinated, or at least for the group of teachers who've chosen not to get vaccinated. And the legalities around that. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing that. But more importantly, for Mandela Day, what Janet and her firm has decided to do is to dedicate their time to teachers and those of us who are struggling with legal challenges. So what they'll be doing is, once you've seen this episode, literally the day of the release of the episode and the day after, they are going to monitor their inbox for any emails that's coming from teachers asking legal advice, and then they will respond to that. Of course, not giving, full service legal aid, because it's very difficult to give advice without having the full nuances or the full context, if you send an email, you can only get in depth to a certain extent. But what they'll do is they'll put you on the right path, at least give some advice on where you can start with solving the legal challenges. So absolutely free, send out an email to them, they'll be in contact. So that's their Mandela Day, giving back to the community. So please, for any of the teachers, send out legal questions to them. If you know other people, other teachers going through some challenging circumstances who need legal advice, please share this episode with them, or at least share the email address. It's Janet Kutsia, ATT. Oh, I got it wrong. Janet at kutsiaatt.co.za. I'm showing it during the episode, and we'll also put it in the links in the comments of this episode so that you can get access to that email address. All right. I really hope you're going to enjoy this episode, and tell us in the comments whether you agree or disagree, or what you think is going to happen in the employment space around people who chose not to get the vaccine. So Janet, our audience knows a lot about you now, since I've done it in the introduction, but normally I ask my guests to immediately jump in and tell us where people can stalk them. But before we do that, your company is doing something amazing for Mandela Day. I want you to please jump in, tell us about what you're doing for teachers, and how people can get hold of you.
Yes, well, from my background, that obviously quite well, we've decided that for Mandela Day, after you've released this recording, we will take the following day, and if there's any teachers out there that require assistance, with some legal matters, they can pop myself or my junior attorney an email, and we will gladly answer them and try and steer them in the right direction and try and assist them as best we can. Obviously, we're not going to give full legal advice over an email without knowing the full background of the matter, but at least we can assist them with maybe starting a matter, whether it's maintenance or divorce or a labor matter or a criminal matter. So we basically giving our services to teachers, because I have a very soft spot for teachers.
Yeah. So it's absolutely amazing service. I think it's so needed, because in many cases, we don't often think about the, I almost said the shit hits the fan, but okay, oops, there I said it. But we don't think about those moments, and we're not prepared for when things really go wrong in our lives. And when this happens, many of us feel helpless and we don't know in which direction to move. So even if you just give like the first port of call, like, here's my current challenge, what should I do? I think that's a great service.
So I often find that teachers are complacent in just taking what is handed to them. They're very soft people, and they don't have the resources at times to ask for assistance, specifically with legal matters. And I've dealt with a lot of teachers, I've helped them through divorces and maintenance and certain things like that. So I really feel they're one of the cornerstones of our society, and yet they're neglected in terms of that, because they don't have the resources. So that's why myself and Lurenchia from our offices, we're literally going to set aside a day, and if there's any queries, they're more than welcome to email us, and we will do our best to assist them, point them in the right direction, and just kind of be there to hold their hand a little bit for that day.
Awesome. And the email addresses that people can reach you on?
Yes, they can email me janet@coetzee.co.za. That's correct. And then they can also email Lurenchia, whose is lurenchia@coetzee.co.za as well.
So what we'll do is, in the description of this episode, and when we share it on social media, we'll also include the email addresses where teachers can then reach out. I think this is such a worthy cause, and amazing from your side that you're setting aside the time for Mandela Day to assist teachers with these legal matters. So teachers out there, if you've got a challenge or you just need some advice, hit off an email. Janet, I foresee some many emails reaching your inbox, because I know from the teachers that I work with, legal matters is so far out of our reference frame. It's not things that we deal with. And having a partner like you guys doing this, I really think that teachers are going to jump at this opportunity. So from my side, knowing what super teacher you are and still extending that from our side, thank you very much for a service like this.
No, it's only our pleasure. For the teachers in our community, definitely our pleasure.
So you've got a very unique story, and I'm very privileged because I was one of your colleagues turned friends, and we're still operating in the same friendship circle. But knowing that you come from a legal background, and you're qualified in law, you were practicing as an attorney, and then you had the opportunity to follow your second passion and a second career in education, and then once again moving from education as a teacher back into law and practicing as an attorney. Can you take us through I also want to say the journey, like why did you decide to make these moves?
In my matric year, it was really a toss-up between studying law and teaching. And I opted right at the end to go for law, which I enjoyed thoroughly, loved it completely, practiced it, wrote my boards, did my articles, went through the whole shebang. And then in 2009, circumstances changed in my life, and I just felt that I actually just needed something more fulfilling at that point in time. And luckily for me, my old high school where I finished matric, there was a position open, and the headmaster knew me quite well because I coached netball there, throughout varsity. So I was still involved with them, and he offered me the position. So I began teaching. So I left law, took a massive salary cut, had to change my lifestyle dramatically. And and I taught for about 8-9 years, and I loved it, loved every moment of it. Taught at a government school, went to a private school, very different, loved both sides of the coin. And then in 2018, another opportunity presented myself where a very good friend of mine, who actually is the owner of Coetzee Attorneys, approached me and offered me a position. And again, at that moment in time, I thought to myself, I need a change and a new challenge because I enjoy that. So I took up the challenge, and I've been here ever since then.
I think you're like the quintessential role model for this kind of interviews that I'm doing, because what I'm trying to achieve with these podcasts is to interview teachers and understand their like their world and understand what they deem as good practice. And I want to interview prominent people in society, business leaders, people that are not in education, trying to figure out what impact teachers have on their life. And here you are standing with feet in like both spheres, having the perspective from both being a teacher and from being a professional outside of teaching. What I want to ask you is that the transferable skills between the two professions. Now, I know from the work that you've done at the school that we both worked at, that you spend a lot of time on the discipline code and the disciplinary procedures. Do you think that it is your law background in that instance that that assisted you?
Oh, definitely. I think most definitely. Even starting, teaching at my old high school, quite a daunting experience, but straight away, pulled into the disciplinary aspect of it due to my legal background. So it's definitely, it's done me well in terms of that, especially moving schools as well, being part of the disciplinary process, being a grade tutor, being on exec as head of discipline and pastoral care. It really, law and teaching is actually they're very similar in the sense of you have to enjoy people. And I love being around people and I love helping people. So I think they're actually very interchangeable.
That's great to hear. We interviewed Kim Craig, who's also part of like legal services in America, and she said the same thing. She's employing teachers in her firm because she understands that teachers can speak in front of people, not have the challenges around, the fear of speaking in front of people. And when you bring those two worlds together, the social aspect and teaching or education, and then the legal know-how, it becomes such a powerful combination.
Yeah, it is. And I say it's interchangeable as well. My director, she's also, she started our firm 10 years ago on her own. She's had 4 children during that whole process. We've got a really good staff, but she was also offering, kind of classes to candidate attorneys during last year, during lockdown and that, where she was doing Zoom classes, trying to assist them as well, and just preparing them for articles and everything. So that's why I'm saying it's interchangeable, the two roles, really.
Yeah. And I believe firmly that in all corporate situations, in all business situations, there will be an aspect of mentoring or an aspect of teaching that you need these skills, or at least you can attain these skills to make it a lot easier understanding where your colleagues are coming from, to train them in what's happening in the business.
Exactly. And I've got, last year at one stage, I had 3 article clerks under me. So, I'm mentoring them continuously, helping them. So it is really, it's all based in teaching, basically. You're teaching the youth still.
Well, let's go back to when you were at school, because we ask all of our guests this. Tell us about a teacher that made an impact on your life and how that shaped your view of the world.
I must be honest, I don't have one specific teacher in mind. I have the greatest respect for all teachers, and I know what they go through on a daily basis. But I must say, for me, my two primary school teachers, who actually didn't physically teach me, they were actually my netball coaches. Those 2 ladies actually played a huge role in my life. I don't even think they realized it at the stage. But they were phenomenal women. They were always happy. They were there for our wins and our losses, and they just taught me really important life skills, working as an individual, working in a team. So I would definitely say those 2 people really impacted my life, and they created such a love for the sport that, I went and I played it all through high school, even though I was not very fond of my high school coach. But because of that grounding that they had given me, I persevered through it and continued to play it, through varsity as well. So I really do think those 2 ladies impacted me quite significantly in my life.
And this is a theme that we see coming up after doing a few of these shows now. There's like specific themes that I hear from the guests. And once again, the emphasis on, or the importance of extramural activities, like having sport having these extramurals where you get to bond with your teachers, or at least have relationships with teachers, that's different from the content teaching or, you know, the academic aspect. And I'm really concerned about the fact that for the last, basically for the last 2 years, we did not have real extramural activities.
Yeah, my heart really bleeds for those learners that were, you know, in their matric year or their grade 11 year and finally made first team. I mean, that's what you've really worked so hard throughout primary school and high school, and that's pretty much been taken away from them, you know, as well as the kids that do all the culture as well. I mean, everything's just kind of, and it's the circumstances we're in, unfortunately, at the moment. But I think it's really hard because being in a school environment, I saw firsthand, and I mean, you know, as well, for a lot of those learners, it's definitely their only outlet and their only kind of saving grace, you know, to be a part of a sports team or a choir or anything like that. It's kind of their thing. So I think a lot of learners struggled with that as well.
Yeah, I'm currently reading Prof. Jonathan Janssen's book, Learning Under Lockdown, what the experience for kids were during lockdown. And one of the kids quoted, and I love this quote from him, I read it yesterday. The kid said, I love learning, but I don't like to be taught.
Yeah.
And that absolutely hit me. It's like not all of the kids that go to school, I'd actually say like a very small margin of kids that go to school are there for the academics, are there to, you know, learn in the class, being taught by a teacher. And that's what teaching is now. That's what school is now. It's like so focused on content, so focused on the exams. When the majority of kids are there for the social aspect of it, like interacting with your friends, the break times, the extramural activities, the sports and so forth. And I'm very concerned about that element of school going lost.
Yeah, a big thing, and I've seen it, you know, I think it's difficult because children also, they feed off of your energy as a teacher. And going back to those two ladies that were, you know, pivotal in my primary school years, you know, they were always present, not just physically present, they were, you know, emotionally present. They showed up every single time. And I think for a teacher, that's one of the key aspects, is for you to be present. And I feel that online teaching makes that very difficult because you struggle to connect with those learners. And I can see that in with my friends, looking at that and everything and chatting to them via WhatsApp. And, you know, they struggle with that because they're used to being in the classroom. We are all actors in that sense. We love the limelight, you know, we want to bounce off the walls and you know, laugh and shout and, you know, enjoy the time with the learners. And now we kind of confined to a camera, and you can't get a sense of a person over a camera.
It is definitely different. I mean, if you're trying to copy and paste the classroom environment onto the virtual environment, that's just not going to work. It's not the same modality. But I do believe there are ways in which we can still build relationships. One-on-one, having smaller groups, having office hours, and having appointments online. But still, and I believe majority of teachers would agree, being in the classroom, having the kids in the class, that's invigorating. That's what makes our job like really that gives us the energy.
I was going to say that also you feed off that energy as well. You know, you could be leaving home and you're having a terrible morning, and as soon as you walk into that classroom, I'm a firm believer, even in the business environment, no matter what's happening in your home environments, as a teacher, or, you know, just me coming into the office, you leave that at the gates, and you bring a different energy into that classroom and into your office area. So I think I think that's hard. And if you're not getting that same energy from the kids, it takes its toll on you.
It's in different spaces that's starting to blend in, because your room can also become your office. It's your bedroom.
Yes.
And we almost, like, humans are programmed to have to like put physical spaces into different frames of mind. So it's possible to achieve that when you teach from home or when you work from home, but it's very, very difficult, more difficult than just actually physically going into another space.
No, it's very difficult. We are allowed to, or I'm allowed to work from home as well, and I actually can't. It's a struggle for me. I need to get up in the morning, get dressed, you know, come to the office. Otherwise, I just mope the entire day. Even if I'm busy, I'm still moping around.
So Janet, I want to move on to recruitment and employment. So you've got experience being on the exec from a school and also working with some legal matters in this case. But we've got a platform called goteach.co.za where we aim to find great jobs for great teachers, putting the best teachers into the best schools. We ask all of our guests this: when you employ people to work with you, now you know from a teacher's aspect and then from the legal aspect, what are those characteristics that you're looking for that sets one candidate apart from another?
It's a difficult one because there's so many different characteristics, you know, that we look at. But I must say, one of my main, you know, when I'm sitting in an interview, for instance, I look to connect with that person. So when we interview our article clerks, our new intake, you have to feel for them because they don't have the necessary skills at this moment in time to sit through a panel interview. So you kind of need to connect to them on a different level. And I definitely think if they, you know, they can kind of talk us through their daily lives. I don't really like asking them a lot of legal questions, for instance. I like to just get a sense of who they are. One example was the junior attorney that actually, Lurenchia, whose email you have, you know, she came for an interview and she was terrified in that interview. And I just got this sense of connection with her, and she had really, you know, she had really persevered through her degree. It had taken her a bit longer due to different reasons. And I just felt a connection with her. And I said to my directors, this girl is going to be a good attorney because she's just got drive and passion. It doesn't matter that she doesn't have the skills at this moment in time. She is going to do it. So for me, it's definitely a connection in an interview, as well as having that drive and passion. You don't have to have the skill set or the knowledge. Most people don't when they go and go for an interview. That's why you're going for that interview, to better yourself. But if you can show that you've got the drive and the passion to do that job, I definitely look for that.
So once again, I mean, the bare basic competency of like being a clerk, like you've got that down. I mean, that's part of your training, and everybody that's applying for that position meets that bare minimum. So when you go into an interview and you've got the opportunity, then it's no need trying to showcase that, you know, I can do the work, because the qualification already says you are qualified to do the work. When you start adding those personal touches of your backstory and showcasing, like answering a question with an example from your own life, lets people in, like they can look behind the curtain into your life. And then what happened here in the example you've mentioned, you find a connection point, a personal connection point that lets you go, I see something of potential.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's the same as when you know, we sit in consultations. So one of my attorneys does not really like dealing with family matters. So she doesn't have that connection with that, you know, person coming in for the consultation. Whereas I enjoy family matters and I can connect on those family matters. So I generally do most of those consultations. She prefers criminal or labor. So, and that's also a different skill set as well. But I mean, during those interviews, you can pick that up with people as well. And you can also see, you know, are they going to be passionate, and are they actually going to be a good fit for your business? And that's quite important. Because we're quite a close-knit family here, and you have to kind of fit in with us as well. So that's also what we look at. We look at personality as well.
So that you've just showcased one of the other major principles when it comes to managing a school or leadership within a school is understanding the strength of your colleagues. That you know that in my company or in my business, our strengths are this, this, and this. We've got people who already suit that. As you said, you love family law, you're there. Your colleague likes labor law, she's there. But where there is a spot lacking, the leadership needs to identify that. And when it comes to appointment, like get somebody to fill that gap. because in
Yes.
this way, we're doing the Avengers effect that I speak about so often during the public talks that I give at schools. Is teachers need to form this Avengers effect. Understand your
Yeah.
strength, what's your
Yes.
superpowers, who's good at what, and then team those people together depending on the problem that needs to be solved or the activity that needs to be done. So it actually starts off with the recruitment process, that if you are employing only family law lawyers,
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
won't be able to offer the service in labor law or anything
Exactly.
like that. Same thing in a school.
Exactly.
If you only get teachers who are all extroverted and over the top, then
Yes.
you're going to lose like a segment of your school, because kids connect with other people who look like them, or that they can
Yes.
or have the same type of personalities.
Well, I mean, we can look at the example from, I mean, we were grade tutors kind of at, you know, the same time for different grades, obviously. But I mean, the people that we were paired with as grade tutors were very different in personality. You know, your fellow grade tutor was, you know, very good at admin. You were, you know, you were good at entertaining. Same with me. I was the admin person, and my grade tutor was, you know, the kids just loved that person, and he was the fun guy kind of thing. But together as a team, we worked very well, and you also worked very well.
Exactly. I mean, if the admin was left to me, it would have never been done. It would be so short. I mean, that's why I've got an executive assistant in the business now, because I knew,
Exactly.
I realized early that if I have to do the admin, this is going to be a
It's going
failure.
to be a problem.
It's not going to be a problem. And
But the school managements identified that. So they solved that problem.
Exactly. So pairing people with complementary skill sets is so important. So during recruitment, you need to understand what is the lacking part. And I heard this from Howard Mann on one of his podcasts, that when you start thinking about employing people, start off with like giving yourself an average competency of all your staff, like, and give it a 10. Like maybe you score everybody, like you get the average of 6 out of 10. Whenever you employ somebody, if they aren't a 7 or above, you're moving backwards. Like when you people, make sure that you like move towards success or more competent staff.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that, because I mean, when we were together previously at one of our friends' functions, you mentioned that I think it's that 16 personalities test.
Yes.
And I mean, we all did that. And I actually did it with the staff here in the office. And it was very interesting, the results that came out. All very different personalities. It was just a super interesting test, but showing different, like you're saying, competencies and personalities, but all working towards a common goal. So if we had to employ the same people, we would not be moving forward, basically.
So this is an activity that I do in the mastermind. So any of the teachers who join our mastermind group, who meets once a month, we do the 16personalities.com test so that you can discover your strengths, and that assists you in discovering your superpower. So that's what Janet just refers to. And the teachers listening to this, go on to 16personalities.com, go do that personality test. It is freakishly accurate. And then like chat to the rest of your staff. It is so good. If you're a principal listening to this, have your staff do it, and you'll start seeing who you can start grouping together. I absolutely love personality tests, and just understanding yourself, like having that self-awareness. But Janet, I want to move on to a massive pressing issue at the moment, and this is why I thought it would be so apt to speak to you. And this is regarding employment, but more specifically around vaccines and vaccination. We are living in crazy times. It's weird to me that we're still having this debate on people wanting to get the vaccine, or people who do not want to get the vaccine for different reasons. I mean, that's not the point of this discussion, but it definitely highlights why we need to teach critical thinking at school level a lot better than we currently are. But we've got teachers who've decided they got the option to take the vaccine, and others who then decided they're not going to go for the vaccine, which is all fair and well. But the run-on effect of this, I'm seeing some fear from teachers now creeping in, and this is why I thought we need some discussion around this, because I don't think the cases have been made. And the one fear we have, and I want to go through this like step by step. The one fear that I've identified within the community of teachers is we're currently employed and we chose not to get the vaccine. Can I get fired based on the fact that I decided not to take the vaccine?
So it's such a gray area at the moment. You know, obviously we're only a year and a half into COVID, and you know, vaccine has only become available recently for us. So there isn't really much case law in terms of people getting fired at this moment or dismissed at this moment in time because they haven't taken the vaccine. I think that's going to probably change in the near future. You know, before we delve into that aspect, we kind of need to touch on various aspects of, you know, the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, more in particular, Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, you know, being the cornerstone of our democracy. I mean, our rights are enshrined in the Constitution, but it's also the state's duty to respect and protect those rights. So now we're faced with this conundrum of, you know, I have the right to dignity, I have the right to life, I have the right to freedom and security, not to subject my, you know, body to scientific experiments, in a sense, you know, without my consent. So we have all of these rights that we have in our Constitution, and people are now stating they don't want to take the vaccine for possibly medical reasons or religious beliefs. So now we get to the point of, is that, and this is a terrible way to kind of put it, and I don't mean it like that, but is that one person's right, does that supersede the community or, you know, the citizens of South Africa? And every right, I always use this, and this is a very simplistic example, so please don't, it was just to, you know, to show the learners when I was teaching life orientation, because I used to try and get examples from everyday life, and I used to do the Constitution with them as well. And I used to say to them, so in the Constitution, everyone has a right to housing. So that means I can just walk into any estate and go, ooh, I really like that house. I'm going to have that house because the Constitution says I have a right to housing. But it doesn't work like that because our rights are limited in terms of Section 36 of the Constitution. So that's why I said it's a very simplistic view of, you know, just explaining it to the kids. So now that's what we kind of faced with, the limitation of that person's right. And there's still going to be a lot of literature on this. You know, a lot of people are going to be writing even more articles and everything as it progresses down the line. Some of the articles I was reading, you know, some of the educators in Cape Town don't want to take it because of their religious views. Some educators in Natal are stating for medical reasons, you know, some are pregnant, and I get that completely. So at the moment, it's very much up in the air, and it's going to come down to basically what's better for the greater good. And some of the articles I was also reading, you know, people, you know, obviously with their own opinions and everything, and they were kind of like, well, if teachers don't want to take the vaccine, well, then they can stay at home and they mustn't get paid. So I think the teaching environment is very different. You know, the employers are going to have to look at certain things, and you as a teacher also, you're going to have to reevaluate, you know, kind of your stance on things, because you are teaching large groups of people. In saying that, you know, everyone is entitled to their own choice at the end of the day. But I think the teaching community is very different, and I think the spotlight is going to be on that, specifically in the near future. You know, limitation of those rights, and it's not mandatory at this moment in time. It's not compulsory, but if the government wants to kind of make it compulsory, you know, there's a whole lot of things that go with that. They need to look at Section 36 of the Constitution, those limitations. Is it reasonable? Is it justifiable? They're also going to have to look at, you know, various acts such as, or legislation more in particular, such as Labor Relations Act, Employment Equity Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is a huge one. So all of those aspects are going to have to be looked at. They can never just make a blanket statement, basically. So I think it's not really probably the answer that people were wanting or hoping from this chat, but it is a gray area at this moment in time.
I think it's the uncertainty around this, because there hasn't been any cases like this appearing in court yet that's specific to the COVID vaccine with teachers in an employment area. And because it's so uncertain, that creates the fear and the anxiety, because I don't want to be the first teacher to get fired for choosing not to take the vaccine, because that then can become a CCMA mediatory issue, or it can end up in the court of law. And I mean, what teacher has got the money to pay that? What school wants to spend the resources and the money on something like that when at the end of the day could use that for educational benefit? So I don't think, and this is my opinion, that we won't see cases where teachers will get fired for choosing not to take the vaccine. I can't, if that happens, I think that'll be like very facetious and very like short, myopic from the leadership of a school who does that.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a really difficult one. Our work environment is different where I'm at the moment. We all luckily in our own offices, so I would imagine our directors are not going to enforce us to have the vaccine, or enforce on us to have the vaccine, because we're all in our own offices. We've kind of spread everyone out, that we wear masks when we're in the common area or the kitchen, or if we go to the bathroom kind of thing in consultations, but we've also limited our consultations. So for our environments, very different. And if I was classified as a high-risk person and I still refused to take the vaccine, my employer could most likely accommodate me in that sense, allow me to work from home certain days of the week, keep me in my own office, I must wear a mask throughout. So it's a really difficult one, and there is case law in terms of the court's ruling. So for instance, in terms of Section 12, your right to freedom and security, your bodily integrity and stuff like that. Courts have ruled before that people who didn't, for instance, in the one example, people had TB and they didn't want to have medical treatment because it was against their religious, beliefs or something, along those lines. And the courts actually ruled that they must have medical treatment. So their right was limited in terms of that. That's what I'm saying. So there's case law in that sense. It's ever changing. Our constitution is, that's why it's been drafted so well. But I mean, you can't tell what's going to happen in a year's time. You could go for that interview and that principal could ask you, have you been vaccinated? And you say no. And he's like, sorry, I have to look after the community, my school community, and I can't risk that. So yeah, that's why I said to you, it's very gray, and there's no certainty at this moment in time.
Yeah, and that's the next point I wanted to talk to you about, is exactly this, that maybe for now, teachers won't get fired or be dismissed based solely on the fact that they chose not to get the vaccine. But when we look at employment moving forward, that when schools want to employ teachers and they put out an advertisement for a vacancy at their school, can the school put that in as a requirement? Like, we are only appointing vaccinated teachers.
So again, it's going to have to come down to, what is going to be dictated by society in terms of that. I mean, we in the legal fraternity, there was a huge uproar, just as an example. I mean, it's not quite the same, but they've kind of stopped us from putting ads out for candidate attorneys stating they must have their own vehicle, even though, for instance, for our firm, you're going to court on a daily basis and everything. So we actually not really allowed to do that, and we can't really ask them in an interview now, do you? Because there was just a huge uproar about that. So there could come a point where schools are only employing teachers that have been vaccinated, and that's where the tricky part comes in, because the principal's duty is to ensure the safety of his learners and his teachers and their environment. And as a teacher, you are dealing with so many children on a daily basis from different, backgrounds and everything. So the principal's not going to want to put those learners at risk from what if I think about it logically. Like I said, not mandatory, not compulsory, but at the moment, anything's possible.
Well, if we compare it to other illnesses, and I know this is like very, very shaky ground when you start doing this, but you can't put in an ad say we're only taking people who are HIV negative, or we are taking people who do not suffer from diabetes. You can't put that. So why then is it okay or not okay for a school to put that in an advertisement?
So we were actually having this discussion last week in the office as well. And one director was, he said, no, they must ask that. Because I was also, myself and the other attorney were speaking about it. And then myself and the other attorney, exactly the same thing as you. We were like, but you can't ask someone if they're HIV positive. You can't put that in that. And he, his thought pattern in terms of COVID is, again, society as a greater good. The state needs to stop a pandemic. And if that means limiting everyone's rights in terms of their religion, etc., in terms of Section 36, and making it mandatory, then they're most likely going to do something like that. And then people will have to get the vaccine. But again, there's going to be a lot of case law on that. There's going to be a lot of people taking them to court, etc. But I don't foresee that a school will be able to put an ad in like that. I must be honest, I really don't. It's the same as you can't ask me if I'm pregnant during my interview kind of thing. So I don't foresee that kind of thing happening. I worry for the teachers who have chosen not to take the vaccine going forward, because, for instance, the one article I did read, the MEC stated there unequivocally, you will not work from home. So if you don't have the vaccine, you are not working from home. Then we will not pay you. So again, the teaching environment, very different. So I worry about the teachers that have chosen not to take it due to religion or medical reasons. I think medical reasons, you most likely can be exempt, especially if you're pregnant at this moment in time, because there's no studies, on the effects of the vaccine on pregnancy, and if you've got underlying issues. So, but I mean, I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting time, I think.
Until the cases are heard and a precedent is set, I mean, it's the Wild West on this specific one, and I think it's going to come down to the ethos of the school and what the leadership of the school really want to communicate. And I think that's where we'll see, like, the people who really are like pro-vaccine will maybe be bold enough to say we only employ teachers who are vaccinated, and making that a policy. They are going to create a lot of red tape for themselves. They're going to create a lot of administrative challenges, and resources could have been spent on better things in school than rather like spending your time on exactly those issues. And then we need to remember that it's my right to disclose to my employer during an interview what I want. So can an interviewer ask me point blank, have you been vaccinated?
Again, no precedent at this moment in time. There's nothing stopping them from asking you. If we look at the one of the directives, just as an example, going forward, just to kind of, I don't want to say that they are going in that direction to make it compulsory or mandatory, but from everything I've been reading and gathering, information, the one directive, in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, your job as an employer is to ensure the well-being of your staff and ensure that they are in a safe environment. So that is I think key as an employer, and a lot of employers might, going forward, actually ask that question, and whether or not the person wants to answer or not is obviously their discretion. But because there's nothing set in stone at this moment in time, they are free to ask that.
And if you're a teacher in an interview being asked that question, it remains your right on how you want to respond. You can tell them point blank, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Of course, that influences or impacts your chances of getting the job. So it's these power dynamics that's happening in these situations, and there's a case for social justice. Like, what would be best practice during an interview to ask a question in this regard or not? So the responsibility of the answer and whether you want to disclose the information still rests on me as the interviewee. I can disclose information as much as I want to.
And also, it's also going to open, as an employer, I wouldn't ask that question really, because you're opening yourself up to discrimination. Oh, I didn't get the job because you discriminated against me because I don't have the vaccine. But that's what I'm saying. There's going to be so many cases going forward because people just don't know how to deal with this at this moment in time. And there's so many different pieces of legislation that have to be looked at. It's not just going, well, it's going to be mandatory and this is now, it is what it is. For instance, with the directive, with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, they basically said that there's nothing prohibiting an employer from dismissing an employee, because they didn't have the vaccine. However, they seem to be leaning more towards looking at Section 189 and Section 188 of the Labor Relations Act and saying, if you're going to dismiss an employee, then it must be due to operational requirements or incapacity. So operational requirements, almost like a retrenchment. So your position has become redundant because you don't want to have the vaccine. So we need to fill it now with someone who will have the vaccine. So it seems to me when I'm reading up on those facts and everything, they seem to be leaning more towards that. And with your operational requirements comes a period of consultation. So I gather what's going to happen is if the employer wants to make it mandatory, they're going to have to consult with their employees. They're going to have to call them in and say, look, in our environment, this is what has to happen. We see a lot of people, so you have to look at the person's specific job and what risks are with that job. Consult with that person, say to them, listen, you need to have a vaccine. You see, you're in a factory and you work with 100 people. We can't risk transmission. If that person then still says, oh, look, I'm not going to have the vaccine due to medical or religious, or my belief system, then you almost need to get a counselor in to counsel them and say, this is why you should have the vaccine because of X, Y, Z, and, that kind of thing. Then after that, if the employee still doesn't want to have the vaccine, then you have to look at dismissing based on operational requirements. So that job is no longer there for that person, kind of thing. So that's why I'm saying it seems to be mirroring the Labor Relations Act in that sense, as well as the incapacity where a person is dismissed, but fairly dismissed, but based on medical reasons. So they can't actually work anymore because of medical reasons. That seems to be the kind of golden thread that they're pulling through at this moment in time.
So what I'm getting at, if I can summarize our discussion then on this. From a school's point of view, the advice that we would give is get in legal consultation with regards to your employment policies and add what is, according to your experts, needs to be put into your employment policies. Would I be correct in saying that?
Most definitely. So what I'm saying now is a broad spectrum of kind of, everything that I've researched and kind of seeing what lines that they're going on. But before you do anything, you're definitely going to have to consult your legal advisors. And you also can't just unilaterally change a contract as well. That's what I'm saying. It seems to be mirroring the Labor Relations Act in terms of a consultation process. You're going to have that consultation process with your teachers. But before you do anything, definitely get legal advice, most definitely.
Okay, so schools, if you'd like some legal advice, you can always contact Janet, Janet at kutsia.att.co.za. I'll show the email address once we sign off again. But then from the teacher's point of view, if anything were to happen, if you were to be dismissed, or in your case, if you feel that you're unfairly dismissed, please also contact Janet and tell them the case so we can see what the nuances are, because the devil is in the detail. What the nuances are going to be is going to set the precedent.
No, definitely. And remember, your dismissal, regardless of what you're getting dismissed for, has to be procedurally and substantively fair. So it's quite a process. They can't just call you in one day and say, sorry, I'm dismissing you. You know, there's different things. But definitely, if you feel disgruntled, or you feel you are being treated unfairly, now's your opportunity to email our firm, you know, pop us a question, and then we'll do our best to kind of, you know, guide you along the correct way to deal with it.
And then I feel, Janet, I'm going to announce it now anyway, that I think there's so much value in a discussion around the legalities for teachers, not only in employment, but around family matters, around, you know, divorce and these stuff, that Janet and I have discussed that we will do a regular episode where we discuss the legal challenges that teachers face. So we'll look at cases, we'll look at issues that really exist for teachers, and then we'll come up, of course, not with like formalized legal advice, but maybe just a few pointers on things to look out for, or work ways in which you can go about solving some of your legal challenges.
Yes, definitely. I'm very excited about that. I think it will be good for our teaching community. Just, you know, just back to your previous point quickly, you know, if there is something you're disgruntled about, remember, you always have to follow the internal process, your grievance process. So always remember that before you can obviously come for legal advice, but your first port of call is to, you know, follow your internal grievance process, whether it's your HR, your deputy, your subject head, whatever. You need to formalize that grievance first before you can actually institute any kind of legal action.
But that's the kind of advice that you'll receive. It's like the first port of call, stick to the grievance procedure, because without that, you can't do anything else. So I'm really looking forward to those new segments. And then the last piece of summary from my side, if you are going for an interview for a vacancy at a school, be prepared for this question, that it might come up. Like any other question, like any part of your preparation, this might be a question that comes up around your health. It might not be directed immediately to, are you vaccinated? But the interviewer can take a long way around and ask you, are you in good health? Trying to pry things out of you. And you need to decide before you go what information you are going to disclose and what information you are not. Yeah,
no, definitely. Just, you know, just a last thing from me as well, last point. I was very skeptical about the vaccine as well. You know, not enough research, all of that kind of jazz. But recently, you know, losing some people that are quite close to us through COVID and everything, my whole perception has genuinely changed. So, you know, that's just my own personal view. What people choose to do is their own, you know, their own thing. But I must say, if you've been in a situation like that where you've lost someone, or you know someone that's lost someone, that person has also died with no dignity. They weren't able to see their families. So what about their rights as well? So ultimately, it's going to come down to public interest versus an individual right. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to.
And we'll have to wait for the first case to set the precedent, to see how the legal system is going to respond to this. But I mean, the formal statement I'd like to make from Super Teachers Unite side is, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm going to get vaccinated. I'm sending out my application today. We're recording this on the 15th. I'm older than 35. I'm younger than 49 for those of you that guessed. I am going for the vaccine, and I'm pro-vaccine. A lot of people close to me aren't. And that's fine. I mean, that's also the kind of situation we need to model in our classrooms, is that people may have differing opinions, but at the end of the day, we're respecting each other for our decisions. It's, the point of this discussion was like, where the legalities, and that fine line in the classroom, in the school setting, when it comes to being vaccinated or not.
But interestingly enough, I saw a list of countries that if, once the pandemic obviously quietens down and it's not a pandemic anymore, and we want to start traveling again, there's certain countries that aren't going to let you travel there without having a vaccine. So
they're gonna give you the option, but like if you still choose not to take it, you're going to limit your own freedoms because of the regulations of other countries.
Exactly.
So once again, in those instances, you need to make the decision whether you want to take the vaccine or not. But once again, making a strong case that we need to teach critical thinking on a higher level. It needs to be a bigger priority for us in schools.
No, definitely.
Janet, thank you very much for spending time with us today. I know, you guys bill by the 5 minutes, I think.
Don't worry, you'll get my invoice.
All right, so that's the end of my business. For one last time, let me just share the email address for those of you that like to contact Janet for their Mandela Day project. janet@kutsiaatt.co.za. I'll also include it in our show descriptions. Please do reach out if you need any legal advice. But that's it from our side today. Looking forward to hearing your comments on this episode. Please do on social media, everywhere where you can, comment. Give us your thoughts. What do you think about all of this? And then, of course, share it with your friends and your other teachers so that we can create this community of super teachers and make a greater positive difference in each and every classroom. Janet, thank you very much. Have a great day.